coming up from the Northeast Live Studios in Guwahati. Northeast Tonight with Wasbir Hussain.
Hello and welcome to Northeast Tonight, the show that decodes the region. Chief Minister Dr. Himanta Biswa Sharma has given a huge inclusivity push in Assam by trying to understand the problems, grievances, hopes and aspirations of the state's indigenous Assamese Muslims and promising to do everything possible to uplift the community through short, medium and long-term measures. Just 2 months after he took over as the new Chief Minister on the 10th of May 2021, Dr. Sharma met with more than 200 indigenous Assamese Muslim community leaders and later formed 7 subcommittees to come up with suggestions and recommendations on specific areas. The committees that the Assam government set up were on cultural identity, health, education, population stabilization, women empowerment, skill development and financial inclusion. On Thursday, the committees submitted their reports to the Chief Minister at a function in full media glare. The committees put forward recommendations ranging from declaring the Assamese Muslims as an indigenous community of Assam to political representation and setting up of an upper house with reservation of seats for the community besides measures to check population explosion, healthcare facilities and for higher education for youths belonging to the community to setting up a Kalakshetra type cultural complex in the name of the community's biggest icon, Ajan Fakir and other figures like Ali Mes. The big question is whether this move is an attempt by the government of Dr. Himanta Biswa Sharma to send out a clear message that the BJP indeed believes in its slogan of Sabka Saath, Sabka Bikash, Sabka Biswas. Does the move have the potential to change the narrative in the country? Will this establish the fact that culture and not religion is and should be the key bonding force among communities in a diverse nation like India? To discuss the subject, I am joined from New Delhi by BJP spokesperson Yasir Ali Jilani. Joining me from Guwahati is Dr. Syed Iftikhar Ahmed, a well-known social worker and anti-AIDS campaigner. In Jorhat, I have Tasdiq Ghaznavi, a leading social worker, and at the studios with me in Guwahati is Mr. Swapnanil Barwa, a senior Assam BJP leader. Gentlemen, welcome to Northeast Tonight. Let me go straight to you, Mr. Yasir Ali Jilani in New Delhi, spokesperson of the BJP and well-known BJP minority Morcha leader. Mr. Yasir Ali Jilani, the Narendra Modi government has been in power from 2014. There has been a certain narrative in this country. There are so many states ruled by the BJP. Now you have suddenly seen the Assam government led by Dr. Himanta Biswa Sharma giving a push, trying to boost the development and uplift of the indigenous Assamese Muslim community. Now, what is your first reaction? How do you look at this development?
First of all, thank you for having me in your show.
Welcome.
I think almost every Assamese watches your program because you are known for your impartial journalism. And now the question for Himanta Biswa Sharma. Let me tell you a few things about our Assam CM. He is the man with vision. He is a people's man and he is on a mission to help the man standing last in the line. आपको समझने की जरूरत है वासिबुर रहमान साहब. हेमंत बिस्वा शर्मा जो नाम है वो नाम लोगों के साथ जुड़ता है. वो पॉलिटिकल डिस्कोर्स और नैरेटिव को बदल के एक नया इतिहास लिखने का काम कर रहा है. हेमंत बिस्वा शर्मा असम के लिए और नॉर्थ ईस्ट के लिए एक ऐसा सितारा है जो लोग एक उभर के जब सामने आया है, तो लोगों को आज पूरे भारत में सिर्फ अगर किसी की राजनीतिक इंप्रेस करती है तो वो है हेमंत विश्व शर्मा जी। और जो आप अपने अभी आपकी रिपोर्ट के अकॉर्डिंग जो आपने अभी बात कही कि उन्होंने जिस तरीके से कमेटी तैयार करी है, ये देखिए जो लीडर होता है ना, जो आपके बारे में सोचता है, जनमानस के बारे में सोचता है, उसके अपलिफ्टमेंट के लिए काम करता है, उसको साथ लेके चलता है, कंधे से कंधा मिला के चलने वाला अगर कोई भारत में अभी लीडर है,
लेकिन मैं आपको या जिलानी साहब, कोई बीजेपी का जो क्रिटिक्स होंगे, बीजेपी का जो क्रिटिक्स है, या तो डॉक्टर हिमंत बिस्वा शर्मा का जो क्रिटिक्स है, जो राइवल्स है, कोई कोई तो ये भी कहेंगे कि ये एक वोट बैंक पॉलिटिक्स है, ये भी कहेंगे।
नहीं, देखिए जो वोट बैंक पॉलिटिक्स का एक नैरेटिव है हिंदुस्तान के अंदर और नॉर्थ ईस्ट के अंदर, वो खास करके तुष्टीकरण, आप समझ रहे हैं, तुष्टीकरण की प्रकाष्ठा का केंद्र बिंदु बनाया कांग्रेस पार्टी ने, और खास करके एक विशेष वर्ग का इस्तेमाल करके पिछले 20-25 सालों में उनको कहां से कहां पहुंचा दिया, मैं और आप जानते हैं, क्योंकि आपकी जो जर्नलिज्म है वो बेहद रिसर्च के साथ होती है, बेहद एविडेंस के साथ आप लाते हैं। आसाम में आज मुसलमानों का क्या हाल है सब जानते हैं, लेकिन जब से हेमंत बिस्वा शर्मा और भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार आई है, पिछली सरकार और अब की ये सरकार, एक शानदार ऐतिहासिक काम बिना किसी के तुष्टीकरण के हो रहा है। सबका साथ, विकास, विश्वास का जो मूल मंत्र है भारतीय जनता पार्टी का, हम उस पे चल रहे हैं। और हेमंत विश्व शर्मा ने कभी किसी को लेके, किसी को एक आंख से अगर वो एक आदमी को देखते हैं तो दूसरी आंख से भी वो एक ही आदमी को देखते हैं। मेरे कहने का मतलब है कि असम के तमाम लोगों के लिए वो एक तरीके से सोचते हैं, चाहे वो हिंदू हो, मुस्लिम हो, सिख हो या ईसाई। हेमंत विश्व शर्मा जी के लिए
मैं आऊंगा जिलानी साहब, मैं आऊंगा दोबारा आपके पास। लेट मी टर्न टू डॉक्टर सैयद इफ्तिकार अहमद। Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed, you are also the chairman of one of the subcommittees. Incidentally, although I am anchoring the show, I was also a chairman of one of the subcommittees. Let me make it clear for the viewers. But Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed, how do you look at this initiative? Because you have been a close watcher of the political scenario in Assam. We have had so many governments since independence. We have had so many chief ministers since independence. Now nobody thought about, at least nobody was prepared, or nobody thought that they should listen to the hopes and aspirations and grievances of the Assamese Muslim community in Assam. So what are your first impressions?
You see, this is absolutely a realization, and I want to tell you what is this realization all about. And this realization is of our Honorable Chief Minister, Dr. Himanta Biswa Sarma. What he has realized that the indigenous Assamese Muslim population forms an important integral part of the greater Assamese society. But what he has realized that this important component of the greater Assamese society, the indigenous Muslims, have never been reached out to. Nobody has ever made the effort to find out what their needs are, what their aspirations are. And as you have mentioned, this 300 representatives on 4th of July, when he invited, he said he's very clear about his whole intentions. You see, there are a lot of people who are asking that, why now? And why do you have to do this? You see, I am very clear about it, because me, as a close watcher of the entire development scenario in the state, you see, the entire exercise which has been carried out is for the welfare of the indigenous Assamese Muslims who has never been reached out. They have no voice, they have no platform, there is no political representation, there is not a scope or any political leaders who would represent this important community of about 44 lakhs of people and represent them and say something about them. Now, Chief Minister has realized that this is a community which has to be reached out. There are a lot of things which need to be done. Look at the state. The reports are very clear with the recommendations. And I think these are very genuine recommendations, because you see the identity of this population, the indigenous Assamese population, has to be maintained. Their cultural needs, they need to be promoted and preserved. And there are so many issues about their inclusion in the health sector improvement and the financial inclusions, the population pattern and everything. There are so many issues that we have come, as a researcher myself, there are a lot of issues which I didn't know myself. And you see, there are some components of the Assamese, the indigenous Muslim society, like the Goria, Muria, Joloha, Desi, and the Sayeds. Look at the Joloha community. I never knew that there are no representations in the health sector there. Those 20 hamlets that I visited, the pathetic scenario. Then look at the Desi population. You talked about Ali Mes. There's nothing called, the cultural preservation of Ali Mes. People will forget the coming generations if these are not maintained. You know, as for example, Azan Fakir, you know, the kind of work that he has done for the community assimilation of the entire greater Assamese society. I mean, these are the issues that need to be highlighted. And there are a lot of health issues, there are a lot of education issues, there are a lot of employability, skill development of the population. And this will be done only, we have learned after going to the community. We have communicated with representatives
Dr.
of
Ahmed,
115 villages.
Right, Dr. Ahmed, I'll come back to you.
We have come to know a lot of issues.
Dr. Ahmed, I'll come back to you. Let me go to Mr. Tasdeeq Ghaznavi, joining me live from Jorhat. Tasdeeq Ghaznavi has been working with the community. He's a well-known social worker. Tasdeeq, you know, some of the recommendations that includes that indigenous Assamese speaking people should be recognized as an indigenous community of Assam. The government of Assam can give a notification, and there can be an authority, whatever an organization can be set up, which will issue a necessary certificate to somebody declaring that person to be an Assamese or indigenous Assamese speaking Muslim. Now, and then there are another demand that there has to be political representation of the community, so that there can be a few people who can raise the voice in at least the Assam Assembly, and there is the demand for creation of an upper house. So how do you look at these demands? Tasdeeq.
Wasbi, thank you so much for having me on the show, and a very good evening to my esteemed panelists. It's indeed a big pleasure to be amongst such a esteemed group of people. Now, I've gone through the PPT that you gave me, and I do have some points of contention, but since you asked regarding the identification, I think it's like having the Star of David on your chest. I do not agree with that. You know what I mean, Wasbin? When the Star of David was used. And the other part where the religious, the cultural, the education, they're absolutely okay, in tune. And I must admire our Chief Minister for thinking on these lines. Education, as I had earlier also said, that it is a must. And I think as the discussion progresses, I would like to give my comments then and there. So can we go ahead? This is what I have to say initially.
Right.
Mr.
Swapnil Barua, now, you know, everybody says that, okay, Assam has a 35% Muslim population, next only to Jammu and Kashmir, so there are a lot of Muslims. But today, if you in reality, we don't even know what is the total population of the Assamese-speaking indigenous Muslims. Therefore, one of the demand has been a census. Now, the bigger question is, you know, on the 4th of July, on the 4th of July last year, when Dr. Himanta Biswa Sharma, the Chief Minister, held that first meeting with the Muslim representatives, Assamese Muslim representatives, he started the conversation. He actually set the tone. He said that, you don't even have a political representation. There is nobody to speak on your behalf. You don't even have a platform to raise your issues, express your grievances, raise your voice. So it was he who said all these things, and now that is what the Assamese Muslims have always been thinking, that we don't have a contiguous, we don't have a constituency dominated by the Assamese Muslims, unlike others. Therefore, our representatives cannot win an election, because at the end of the day, election in this country still goes on various demographic indicators. Demography is a very important part of winning an election. Now, therefore, the demand has come that there has to be some kind of political representation for the Assamese Muslims, and there has to be an upper house created, and if the upper house is actually created, then a few seats need to be reserved for the Assamese Muslims. And now they have also cited Article 333 of the Indian Constitution, in accordance with which the governor nominates Anglo-Indian community representatives in the West Bengal Assembly, for example. Now, what do you think about these demands which has been raised, like political representation, recognizing the Assamese Muslim community as an indigenous community? You have been a bureaucrat, you have served the Assam government for 40 years, and Chief Minister yesterday said that most of these demands are implementable. Now, what do you think of these demands, and do you think most of these demands are implementable?
Wasbir, I think Assam really has not understood the importance of this acceptance or raising of the issue of the Assamese Muslims by the Honorable Chief Minister within the first year of his, or immediately after assumption of office, because this is a cultural history which is being corrected. If you look at the Ahom days, or even the days of Shankardev, you find Shantkha being there as an integral part of the Vaishnavite society in Assam. Then you have seen how the Muslim population has been an integral part of the Ahom court. You have seen how they have contributed towards the development of the art and culture of the state. Imagine, because one thing has to be realized is that the Assamese Muslims were not, labor. They came into Assam not as labor, they came in as specialists. They were specializing in reading Persian, which was the language, court language in between the Mughal kings and the Ahom kings. Then there were metallurgy specialists, there were architectural specialists. In fact, the Ronghor and the Karanghor, if you find out, has been designed by indigenous Muslims, and the execution or the bricklaying and all these kind of textures have been done by the Assamese Muslims themselves. If you look at the mints, the striking of the coin, the calligraphy which was required in the Ahom coins, and finally towards the 17th century, when you find that the Ahom coins also carried Persian inscriptions in that, we all have this contribution of the Assamese Muslims. So they have been an integral part of the Assamese society, which unfortunately since the 1950s they have been relegated to the background. In fact, it has been a tyranny of majority that the later migrants have taken over the political space, and these people who have been indigenous and have been here for about 600 years now have been pushed to the background. This correction of history has been done by the Honorable Chief Minister, which I think is a very, very, very important part, and realization of the fact that we have to live together, and this is cultural Assam. The Assamese Muslims have never been religious Muslims, in the sense that they are not religiously biased but culturally biased. So our integration was a cultural integration. In fact, if you look at the people, I know of certain cases, I know of people who are the most Assamese of Assamese in the Muslim community, living in Tittabor, Jorhat, Hibokhagor and all these places. So this realization as correction has been done, and now the first step has been taken that the 7 committees have given their recommendations. They will be examined, and the Honorable Chief Minister has already made it very clear that these are implementable decisions. Yes, I think by the time the House gets created, don't be surprised that the Honorable Chief Minister may consider an Assamese Muslim representative to go to the Rajya Sabha. In fact, that I don't rule out the possibility prior to the lower house or the upper house being set up. And that kinds of, in different kinds, you have seen the council, Goria Moria Council has been given. I think there could be an expansion of funds allocated to them. There would be interaction with the community as to assess the felt
Right.
needs, and thereby not only a transfer of money, but the liberty for the community to develop itself.
Absolutely. Jilani साहब, यासिर अली जिलानी, स्वप्निल बरुआ जी हमारा साथ है. ये वरिष्ठ अधिकारी रह चुके हैं. He is an IAS officer who has been served the Assam government for 40 years. खैर आप अभी बीजेपी में है, ये अलग बात है. But he has been saying a very important point. उन्होंने एक बड़ा important अहम point उन्होंने raise किया. He said that cultural history is being corrected. तो उनका कहने का मतलब ये था कि असम में जो मुस्लिम्स का जो हिस्ट्री है, it dates back to 1206. जो ये among the early migrants to Assam, 1206 the Muslims had come to Assam, and we have the Ahom history starting from 1228. तो लगभग साथ में मतलब है. तो ये nobody talked about the cultural history of the Muslims of Assam, the indigenous Muslims of Assam. They have hundreds of years of history. And if you talk about Azan Fakir, Jilani Saab, Azan Fakir was a Sufi saint who came from the bank of the Tigris River. Assam aake he learned the Assamese language. He composed the jikirs, which are in sync with the philosophy of Assam's biggest philosopher and saint, Srimanta Hankardev. तो श्रीमंत हंकरदेव का जो फिलॉसफी ऑफ ह्यूमैनिज्म था, अजान फकीर का जिकिर में जो वो बात कहते हैं, इट इज सिमिलर. तो कल्चरल हिस्ट्री बीइंग क्रिएटेड बाय डॉक्टर बीइंग करेक्टेड, कल्चरल हिस्ट्री बीइंग करेक्टेड बाय डॉक्टर हिमंत बिश्व शर्मा, क्या कहेंगे?
देखिए, मुझे लगता है वासिफ भाई की जो आर डाइशिंग एंड डायनेमिक सीएम ऑफ असम is working for Assamese Muslim in a way no other government worked so far. मैंने तो नहीं देखा अभी तक, जितना मैं फॉलो कर रहा हूँ तमाम राज्यों में. पता है वो his focus is on the educate Muslim. हिमंत विश्व शर्मा जी किसी भी काम को बहुत शिद्दत से करते हैं. वो चाहते हैं कि educate Assamese Muslim in such a way that they get employed later on. आप जब पढ़ेंगे तो आप अपने आप में आत्मनिर्भर होंगे. ये उनकी सोच है. अच्छा, उनकी सोच ऐसी क्यों है? वो इस तरीके से क्यों सोचते हैं? क्योंकि वो उन्हीं लोगों में से रह के आगे बढ़े. उन्होंने उन लोगों को बहुत करीब से देखा है. और जिस आजान फकीर साहब की आप बात कर रहे, मैं आपको एक और वहाँ पे पवा मक्का मुझे ध्यान आता है, जो वहां पे भी एक
हाजू में है पुआ मक्का,
हाजू में पवा मक्का,
हजरत ग्यासुद्दीन औलिया का मजार है. हजरत ग्यासुद्दीन औलिया का मजार वहां है.
जी. तो हमें उस पर भी चर्चा करनी चाहिए. और जिस तरीके से फोकस होके हर इशू पे असम के मुख्यमंत्री एड्रेस कर रहे हैं, ये हमारे लिए बड़ा ऐतिहासिक है. हिस्टोरिकल ये सारी चीजें हमारे सामने आ रही हैं. मुझे लगता है कि हमें और भी बड़े पैमाने पे वासिफ साहब इसको चर्चा में रखनी चाहिए. हमें बार बार इस तरीके की डिबेट में हेमंत विश्व शर्मा की जो पूरी की पूरे स्टाइल ऑफ फंक्शन है, जो उनके काम करने का तरीका है, जो काम वो कर रहे हैं, लोगों को साथ लेके चल रहे हैं, उस पे हमें डिबेट करते रहना चाहिए. क्योंकि लोगों को और हिंदुस्तान को, खास करके दिल्ली में भी ये बात चर्चा में है कि जिस तरीके से असम के सारे लोग इस वक्त हेमंत विश्व शर्मा की तरफ देख रहे हैं और वो काम कर रहे हैं, उस काम का चर्चा होना चाहिए. और मुझे बेहद खुशी होती है कि वो सबको साथ लेके चल रहे हैं. जो मूल मंत्र है भारतीय जनता पार्टी का, सबका साथ, विकास, विश्वास, और लाल किले के प्राचीर के बाद जब वजीर आजम प्रयास की बात करते हैं तो वो 135 करोड़ भारतीय की बात करते हैं. और उस 135 करोड़ भारतीय में आसाम का इंडिजीनियस मुसलमान, और इंडिजीनियस मुसलमानों के बारे में भी भारत को जानना चाहिए कि वो कितना कल्चर से भरा हुआ है, कल्चरल है, और कितना अपने देश से, अपने राज्य से वो लगाव रखता है. और
Wasvi, can I add a point here? I think another thing which is going to happen because of this is the Honorable Chief Minister has realized that I have to empower these people who are an integral part of our society. In a sense that in the last 75 years they had been virtually given up, and in a feeling of neglect and depression had come into the community. I think by bringing him to the forefront, bringing the whole community to the forefront, he is trying to restore the confidence of this community, which has contributed so much. Imagine Dr. Moidul Islam Bora, perhaps one of the first PhDs from Assam. Remember Mofizuddin Ahmad Hazarika. Remember Soyed Abdul Malik. Remember Imran Shah. Or let's see, Ali Baido, and all the Nurul Haq. So many people have contributed so much towards the cultural enhancement and improvement of the Assamese cultural environment, that these people have the competency, but somehow they have been relegated to us, or they have been kept aside. It is my responsibility, bounden duty, to bring them back to their real place and let the community get back that feeling of confidence into them and become a part of the mainstream, which I think is another very important issue.
Well said, Swapnil Barua. Let me turn once again to Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed. Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed, Swapnil Barua has said a very important thing. He said what the Assam government's move is basically that cultural history is being corrected. He sees this move as a correction of the cultural history of Assam. I think that's a very significant statement which Swapnil Barua has made.
You see, the cultural history of the indigenous Assamese Muslims are very rich. They are very rich, and they run right from 1200 century, and they have proved. And there are a lot of technicians, experts who have come into the state of Assam. And they have been culturally into the backstage, and now the Chief Minister is trying to bring us to the forefront of the entire Assamese broader society. You see, the bridge has been built. The Chief Minister has taken this initiative where the government built the bridge with the community. Now it will be our responsibility and also collective responsibility to strengthen this bridge. And we have a lot of role to play. One thing I just want to mention here, he said something very important that day. This report is not just to be put inside an envelope. It's not any confidential report. This report needs to be disseminated in all the media possible, whether it is television talks or media, newspapers or magazines or even discussions, because only by doing this, you will bring the entire indigenous Assamese Muslims to the forefront.
Absolutely.
And
let's have everybody on the screen.
Recommendations. They are absolutely transparent.
Right. I'll once again come back to you, Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed. Let me once again go to Tasdiq Ghaznavi. Tasdiq, some of the suggestions, like for example, if you go into that report of the health or the population stabilization subcommittees, you find that the villages, the remote areas where the community people reside, there still the health facilities are not up to the mark. That is, the health committee's report is saying that people still believe in non-conventional forms of medical treatment, like for example unqualified pharmacies, the quacks. So that again goes to explain the lack of education among the community. Now it's a different matter that before this committee has filed its reports, the Assam government has set up 8 women's colleges in the minority dominated areas already. So that was allocated in the budget last year. The announcement was made. Now, how do you look at some of these recommendations, like the need to skill development among the community members, government funding for youths of the community for higher studies, like recognizing the Julha community, which is a tea garden community, who are Muslims, but their allegation is that they don't get the benefits of the tea garden community enjoy. So these are some of the recommendations that have come in these reports.
Yeah, Wasbir, I've been through the presentation, as I told you, and the recommendations on the health side is just fantastic. That is what I actually wanted, and especially I have also been through the educational part, wherein it was specifically mentioned about Islamic learning. I think this is a very good point, and it should be taken forward, because Islamic learning is very important, We'd rather have educated youth rather than have jihadis, you know. So this type of education is very important. And on the health side, the family planning and other things, I think it's absolutely to the point. The suggestions, the proposals are to the point, and I think it should be well accepted amongst the entire community here in Assam.
Absolutely.
Education, I think, needs a lot of importance.
Right. Tasdiq Ghaznavi, Tasdiq has highlighted, he has flagged the need for proper Islamic learning so that you know the text well and you can fit into the present day society without compromising on the Islamic tenets. On that, we'll go for a short break. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Let's carry on this conversation. The big Assamese Muslim push by the government of Dr. Himanta Biswa Sharma in Assam. मैं दोबारा आता हूँ आपके पास जिलानी साहब. You know, ये जो इनिशिएटिव है एक पर्टिकुलर माइनॉरिटी कम्युनिटी का पुश करने के लिए ये जो इनिशिएटिव ये जो कदम उठाए हैं असम सरकार ने, तो ये आप मानते हैं क्या इसको रेप्लिकेट भी कर सकता है अन्य जगह में? कैन दिस बी रेप्लिकेटेड इन अदर स्टेट्स? और डू यू थिंक ये किस तरह का मतलब इसका ओवरऑल इम्पैक्ट होगा?
देखिए, हिमंत विश्व शर्मा जी इज अ डायनामिक लीडर एंड यू ऑल विल सी द रिजल्ट ऑफ हिज एफर्ट विद इन वेरी शॉर्ट पीरियड ऑफ टाइम. और आप पूरे भारत में, मैं जानता हूं जो उनकी लीडरशिप क्वालिटी है उसमें आपको दिखेगा कि जो काम वो आसाम में कर रहे हैं, जो जिस तरीके से वो लोगों को जोड़ के चल रहे हैं, वो दूसरे स्टेट में भी इसका इम्पैक्ट और इफेक्ट पड़ेगा. वासिफ साहब इस बात का ध्यान रखेंगे, क्योंकि मैं भी बहुत उन्हें ध्यान से देखता हूं, मैं उन्हें फॉलो करता हूं, मैं उनके काम को रेगुलर डे टू डे मैं देख रहा हूं. जिस तरीके से वो असम को एक तरीके से एक नई ऊंचाई की तरफ लेके जा रहे हैं. आज तक इतने दिनों में नॉर्थ ईस्ट का कोई स्टेट इतनी जल्दी तरक्की करते हुए अगर कोई स्टेट दिख रहा है तो वो है असम.
लेकिन सबका ध्यान अभी रहेगा किस तरह का इम्प्लीमेंटेशन होता है, क्या लेवल का इम्प्लीमेंटेशन होता है, उसका ऊपर सबका ध्यान रहेगा.
बिल्कुल रहेगा सबका. आप देखिए ना, अभी आपने ही अपने पूरे जो आपकी डिबेट से पहले जो आपने एक पैकेज दिखाया था जिसमें आपने बताया कि उन्होंने कमिटीज बनाई हैं रिगार्डिंग मुस्लिम्स अपलिफ्टमेंट का पूरा प्रोग्राम उन्होंने सामने रखा है. उन्होंने किस तरीके से लोगों को जोड़ने के लिए जो असमीज मुस्लिम का पूरा इतिहास है उसको सामने रखने के लिए आज इस बात की खुशी होनी चाहिए इंडिजीनियस असमीज मुसलमान को कि आज अजान फकीर पे चर्चा हो रही है और सरकार हेमंत विश्व शर्मा जी की है. आज पवा मक्का के जो सूफी संत है उन पे चर्चा हो रही है. आज असमीज कल्चर पे हम चर्चा कर रहे हैं और कितनी गहरी और कितनी हमारी जो संस्कृति है, जो असम के असमीज संस्कार हैं, उस पे आज पूरा भारत चर्चा कर रहा है. इससे आप अंदाजा लगा सकते हैं कि हम जो काम मुख्यमंत्री लेके आ रहे हैं वो नीचे जमीन तक, मैंने पहले ही कहा था कि लास्ट लाइन में खड़े हुए लोगों तक वो पहुंच रहे हैं और पहुंच के उनको मेन स्ट्रीम में जोड़ने का काम करेंगे. एजुकेशन पे ध्यान दे रहे हैं, हेल्थ पे ध्यान दे रहे हैं. आपने अब तक देखा है कि हेल्थ की जो सिचुएशन है आसाम में वो कितनी खस्ता हालत रही है, कितनी बैड कंडीशन में हेल्थ डिपार्टमेंट का काम रहा है.
नहीं, ये बात जिलानी साहब अभी वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट क्या था, अभी क्या चेंज हो रहा है. यू नो इन द लास्ट 8-10 साल से हेल्थ कंडीशन इज इम्प्रूव ओनली इन द लास्ट मे बी 10 years. लास्ट 10 साल में ही हेल्थ का सिचुएशन इम्प्रूव हुआ है. उससे पहले अभी भी कई जगह है अभी भी जगह है जिसमें हेल्थ सर्विसेज बहुत ही मतलब डेवलपमेंट होना चाहिए और भी स्कोप है, लेकिन लास्ट 10 ईयर्स से जो हेल्थ का इंप्रूवमेंट हुआ है वो एक अलग बात है। लेकिन लेट्स कम बैक टू द डिबेट। डॉक्टर इफ्तिकार अहमद, जलन साहब, आई कम बैक टू यू।
Under his leadership,
मैं आऊंगा, आपके पास
आप
आऊंगा।
देखेंगे कि going to emerge as economically, culturally, socially and politically,
Right.
हम कितने strong हो रहे हैं, very strong condition है हमारे असम की इस वक्त। तो इस पे भी तो हम चर्चा कर रहे हैं ना, इसी पे तो चर्चा हो रही है, इसी पे तो हम बात कर रहे हैं। आज पूरा भारत आपकी तरफ आज न्यूज लाइव के इस चर्चा को पूरे भारत में लोग देख रहे हैं या देखेंगे। तो हम चर्चा क्या कर रहे हैं? हम चर्चा कर रहे हैं कि इंडिजीनियस मुसलमानों के ऊपर उनके बारे में आज तक कभी असम में क्यों नहीं चर्चा हुई। ये सिर्फ इस वक्त जो लीडरशिप है हेमंत विश्व शर्मा जी की, उस वक्त ये चर्चा हो रही है। ये मेरे और आपके लिए फख्र की बात है, ये हमारे लिए प्राउड की बात है। इस बात का भी ध्यान रखिए।
Now, Mr. Swapnil Barua, expanding on your point, cultural history which is being corrected, you see it like that. Now, I'm sure you are aware of the rich cultural heritage.
Yes,
People are culturally similar. A lot of people may ask this question: why should there be special provisions or special step measures taken for a particular religious community? But now, how do you look at the Assamese Muslims as a cultural community, or do you see them as only an ordinary religious community? So a lot of people see it as a cultural community.
Yeah, there is no doubt about that we in Assam treat the Assamese Muslims as a cultural community. There is nothing religious about it. And who can tell it better than the place from where I come from? I come from Puranigudam, and if you go there and see the attachment of the people, the different communities that live around the people. They are tribal people, they are Assamese people, they are Vaishnavite people, they are Brahmin people, and they are the Muslim people. We have never known any kind of separation. But Wasbir, another great point which I had missed and I would like to bring forward to you is that not only is this attempt to raise the standards of the Assamese Muslim community, but also to transfer the leadership of the improvement of the Muslim community in Assam to the Assamese Muslims. You know, this is another very significant point. So long, in the last 75 years, the Assamese Muslim community amongst the Muslims of Assam had been relegated to the background. Yet they were the most educated among the Muslim community that was there in Assam. Now, because of that, the whole educational thrust which we are trying to bring in, the party and the government is trying to bring in, is to give the leadership to the Assamese Muslim community that they should lead the show and bring in about the much needed educational improvement in the entire Muslim community in Assam.
Let me also put on record, viewers, that there are indigenous, Bengali-speaking indigenous Muslims in places like the Barak Valley. Who has a rich history.
Yes.
They are linked to the Kachari kings. They have a 500 to 600-year-old history. So that also has to be something which I would like to put on record so that there is no misunderstanding and confusion. We are discussing on Assamese Muslims because as a first step, the Chief Minister wanted that he wanted to know the issues concerning the Assamese-speaking indigenous Muslims, and he had said in the month of July last year, after this meeting with the Assamese Muslim representatives, that he is going to hold a similar kind of an interaction with the indigenous Bengali-speaking Muslims of Assam. So I will not elaborate on that right now. Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed, I'm coming to you, Tasdeeq. Not many people know. Are you in favor of a chapter on the history of the Assamese Muslims, the rich culture of the Assamese Muslims in the textbooks, at least at the school level or a secondary level in Assam? Because, let me give you one example. Koliabor, where the large part of the Moria community, the Moria people live, they have the oldest mosques. There are two mosques. One of them is the Bar Masjid. These two mosques predates even the Taj Mahal. They were built before the Taj Mahal was built by Shah Jahan. So, not many people know about this. This is not yet a tourist attraction. Not even a tourist attraction even today. So, do you think that at least a small chapter on one of the integral communities of Assam, the Assamese Muslims should be there in the textbooks or at whatever level?
You see, I would definitely like to see that some of the chapters, even in history, be included in some of the chapters included on the history of the earlier Assamese Muslims who have come into the state and established themselves. You see, when Azan Fakir Pir Sahib came here, there were 4 Pirs who came together. There's one very important mausoleum of Sawal Pir Sahib. And Sawal Pir Sahib, in fact, the mausoleum is looked after by the entire local Ahom community. It is the Handikoi family who is looking after. The integration cannot be anything, less important. If you just visit Sawal Pir Sahib and Azan Pir Dargah Sarif, you can see how the people are taking care of the dargahs out there. And it is a classic example. And in fact, we are all descendants of the same Sawal Pir Sahib and Azan Pir Sahib. So we have seen that this history has to be somehow recorded. Because you see, in Sawal Pir Sahib Dargah, we have got Mr. Gohai who has written a small write-up. These write-ups will vanish if they are not included as chapters for younger generations to come and learn. Because the rich culture, if it is not recorded and if it is not being taught to students, the coming generations will lose track of their own descendants, like ancestors.
I think I could supplement to what Iftikhar Ahmed is saying is that it is absolutely necessary that now.
Sabzanil wants to add to what you have said. Yes,
I think we have in the archaeological department, the blame would partially go to me also, that we have not really looked at the perspective of the Muslim monument preservation in the archaeological, recording the archaeological evidence of Assam, or even in the history of it. I think it is absolutely necessary that while we do this, even let us say the masjid at Samugri, the minar which was shifted, I think it was another great example of integration in the sense that the whole community contributed towards and felt the essence that yes, this is a monument which is a landmark of our area, and everyone got together of the area that we should not allow this to be damaged because of development, but we should contribute together. And so similar monuments which are lying there, especially in Upper Assam, I have seen in the Titabor area or somewhere near along the Disang River, those kind of areas need to be documented, and the different Pir mazars which are there, that also needs to be documented. And I think none is better to do it, or I think they could do it on a priority basis, is the Goria Moria Council which is there, which will definitely create, and I think this dissemination of information should begin from that council that look, these are the neglected areas. We also have this architectural heritage, this historical heritage, which is an integral part of the heritage of Assam.
Right. Tasdeeq, this is very interesting, we already have a history of integration. Like Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed said that Sawal Pir's Dargah in Himolaguri is looked after by non-Muslims, by a Handik family and others. Now, we all know that the Azan Pir's Dargah, Assam's most well-known Sufi saint, Azan Pir's Dargah is located in a village where not a single Muslim family live. Except the muazzin who is on payroll, there is not a single Muslim, except the khadim, not a single Muslim family reside. So this move, the Assam government's attempt to boost development among the Assamese Muslims, don't you think this is going to consolidate the Assamese society?
Yeah, definitely, Wasbir. As far as the cultural aspect is concerned, I think it's very important. But my take on this is slightly different in the sense that, you had mentioned about skill development and, women empowerment, financial inclusions, and all these things. Now, if these things go through and the future generation is benefited by them, then they will automatically preserve the culture that they came out from. So I would still stress on your proposals of skill development and financial inclusions, etc., etc. And then finally, uh, uh, one thing that I always would advocate is that we should preserve or rather promote the deserving kind rather than the reserving kind. So
Right.
this would take the community forward.
So the basic point that Tasdeeq is making is that the community has to develop economically. The financial inclusion needs to be there, skill development, all they have to get jobs. Then automatically the cultural aspects will be taken care of. I'm coming back to you, Yasir Ali Jilani. Jilani साहब ये बताइए कि अभी do you think that already जो हमने जो प्रश्न पूछा था Assam में already there is a strong history of bonding among the Assamese Muslims and the other communities, the Hindus and others. Do you think this kind of an initiative is going to further strengthen society? Do you think एक diverse country जो है इंडिया जैसा एक भारत जैसा एक देश में इस तरह का डेवलपमेंट पुश माइनॉरिटी कम्युनिटी के लिए ये एक बड़ा ही सही कदम है?
देखिए ये बहुत ही सही कदम है और ये पूरे भारत का कल्चर है, भारत का नेचर है। भारत में जब पहली बार हिंदुस्तान के अंदर आज से 1000 साल पहले मुसलमान आते हैं तो भारत के सनातन धर्म के मानने वाले हिंदू ने, राजा चेरूमल ने उनको साउथ में मस्जिद बना के दिया। ये हमारा रिच कल्चर, हमारी जो यूनिटी को बताता है, हमारी जो गंगा जमनी तहजीब है उसको बार बार सामने ला के रखता है। यही भारत, यही एग्जैक्टली भारत है। और इस भारत में जो काम खास करके आसाम में असमीज मुस्लिम और अदर असमीज लोगों के बीच जो बॉन्डिंग को और नजदीक लाने की कोशिश की जा रही है, जिसमें मुख्य रोल जो है वहां के सीएम निभा रहे हैं, ये एक बहुत अहम समय है। और इसमें देखिए जो इकोनॉमिकली हम बार बार बात कर रहे हैं कि हम कैसे अपनी विद इन सोसाइटी में जो लोग हैं उनको कैसे बड़ा करें और खड़ा करें। तो आपने देखा होगा एक मिनिस्ट्री ऑफ माइनॉरिटी अफेयर्स का एक प्रोग्राम है हुनर हाट, जो छोटे छोटे हुनरमंद लोगों को सुदूर भारत के यानी इंटीरियर जो इंडिया का पार्ट है जहाँ पे वो उस्ताद रहते हैं, वो जो काम करने वाले कारीगर रहते हैं, उनको लाके एक ऐसा इंटरनेशनल प्लेटफॉर्म दिया जा रहा है जिससे वो इकोनॉमिकल उनकी कंडीशन जो है उनका ठीक हो और वो मेन स्ट्रीम में आके खड़े हों। तो ये जो चीजें सामने आ रही हैं, खास करके 2014 जो आपने कहा है कि जब मोदी जी आते हैं, इस भारत के नए वजीर आजम बनते हैं और एक बड़ा बदलाव आता है भारत के अंदर, तो ये सारी चीजें अहम कार्य हो रही हैं। ये जो काम हो रहा है, ये जो लोगों को इकट्ठा किया जा रहा है, इसका इम्पैक्ट इफेक्ट बहुत जबरदस्त हमारी सोसाइटी में पड़ेगा आने वाले टाइम में। और जो क्रिटिक्स हैं, जो लोग तमाम जो डेवलपमेंट के काम है उस पर भी अगर क्वेश्चन कर रहे हैं, तो मुझे लगता है मैं उनसे तो अपने फोल्डिंग हैंड के साथ उनसे रिक्वेस्ट कर सकता हूं, उनसे ये कह सकता हूं कि आप कम से कम अभी हमारी कम्युनिटी को जो बढ़ रही है, आगे बढ़ रही है, उसमें आप भी साथ आएं और इस नए भारत के में आप भी जुड़ें। मेरा सिर्फ यही कहना है। और मैं थैंक यू करूंगा आपको डॉक्टर साहब, आपके चैनल को और मुख्यमंत्री हेमंत बिश्व शर्मा जी को, जो सबको साथ लेके चल रहे हैं, जो उनका ड्रीम है एक नया आसाम, एक नया आसाम सामने पूरे भारत में रखना, जो एग्जाम्पल बने, जो दूसरे राज्य के लोग आसाम से सीखें, वो आसाम बनाना चाहते हैं। उसमें मुझे लगता है कि तमाम आसाम के लोग, असमीज इंडिजिनियस मुसलमान, आसाम के दूसरे जो कम्युनिटी के लोग हैं, वो सब मिलके उनका साथ दें और एक नया आसाम का जो सूर्य उदय हो रहा है उसके इतिहास के काम में साथ
final comments, Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed, final comments from you.
It's a very well laid out plan by the Chief Minister, and I feel that he is very sincere about it. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come out with 7 such key issues to be dealt with, the 7 teams that he has constituted. And I'm quite confident that he has also planned out in a phased manner, in a short term and a medium term and a long term plan, and he has a plan for himself, and he has also asked the community that you let there be public monitoring to see, because he has asked us to be openly discuss these issues with the community, and then we will, the community will themselves will be able to
Right.
monitor how far these recommendations are implemented. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Last word to you, Swapnil Barua. People, critics of your party, that is the BJP, critics of the Chief Minister and his government would continue to say that this is nothing but a vote bank politics. But at the same time, there will be others who will say that the number of the Assamese Muslims are so small that that number of votes does not matter for a party like the BJP in Assam, where you have more than 60 seats on your own and you have almost all the opposition parties supporting you. So these are two narratives. So overall, what will be your final take?
I think
What is the broad message in this initiative by the Chief Minister?
the broad message in the initiative by the Chief Minister is that the Assamese Muslims are an integral part of our overall cultural society. We have to develop our culture, protect our culture, preserve our culture, and promote our culture. And I think everyone has to join in the race. And this is an opportunity which he has given to the Assamese Muslim community, especially the leaders among them, that come forward, please take your reserved or rightful role in this development process, take the community forward and bring them to the glory which they had shared till a few years ago.
Absolutely, absolutely. On that note, at the end of the day, the Chief Minister's initiative giving a voice to the Assamese Muslim community, it's almost like the recognition has already been given by this initiative that the Chief Minister has taken in the month of July. That is within 2 months of his assuming office, by having this discussion with the Assamese Muslim representatives, then coming up with the 7 subcommittees, then the subcommittees going through all the nitty-gritties of the various issues and presenting their reports to the Chief Minister. And Chief Minister, after listening to the presentation, saying that most of the recommendations are implementable and that he's going to take up short, medium and long-term measures to implement this. So this is a big push by the Chief Minister towards the minority communities. And as I said, there will be critics who will say that this is vote bank politics, but there will be others who will realize the fact that the Assamese Muslim community is so small that for a big party like the BJP in Assam that has an absolute majority in the House on its own almost, and then all the alliance partners supporting, there is virtually no opposition except the AIUDF today. Congress is in absolute shambles. I think that theory that it is a vote bank politics will be
And
debunked.
no one is small for us.
But debunked at the end of the day. I thank all my panelists for participating in the show and the viewers for watching the program. Good night and goodbye.